just an advert for climate change activists, are they not? But the Adam Smith Institute, the free market think tank, and others are saying, well, actually, markets, not socialist economies, must be embraced to solve climate change, according to a brand new report. And also, this comes as Greta Thunberg, the child activist and well-known truant, has said that Scotland, which of course is going to be hosting that COP26 summit come November to tackle climate change, she says Scotland is not a world leader on climate change. She, of course, not being a world leader on anything other than truancy. But let's talk about all of this with Connor Tomlinson. He's Policy Director at the British Conservation Alliance and is co-author of the report. Good morning to you, Connor.
Good morning, Julia. It's very strange being on this side of the screen because you're usually the person I listen to when I have my morning coffee, so it's a pleasure.
Very, very nice. Thank you very much indeed for saying that. Well, this paper is in conjunction with the Adam Smith Institute and the British Conservation Alliance and is looking at how we tackle issues of climate change. Now, lots of people, still a lot of people who don't accept that climate change is an issue or that it is resulting largely of a man-made concern and reasons. But you're saying, look, if we are going to tackle environmental issues, and I think all of us, surely everyone should agree we want to have cleaner fuels and to tackle pollution and the like, that would make absolute sense to everybody, that we don't necessarily need a lot of the measures which the climate change activists seem to demand are needed, all of which seem to be very much on the socialist side rather than the market economy side in terms of taking away freedom rather than using our freedoms to deliver the change. Tell us what the paper says.
Well, I would like to say I don't blame anyone at all about their apathy concerning the climate debate, because in the IPCC report, there's not actually there's not actually the apocalyptic predictions that Extinction Rebellion beat us over the head with constantly in doing their dreadful protests. And people like AOC in the States who offer the Green New Deal say the world's going to end in 10 years. There's no evidence for that. There's also no evidence that suggests we should be criminalizing climate denial, as people even like Kamala Harris has suggested. So instead of the grand socialist planning, which even the Conservative government seems to be adopting, as Rishi Sunak said on Andrew Neil show on GB News, we're going to be spending up to $1 billion or over with taxes, plus the extra costs that we factored in on consumer goods that are doubtless going to be included once the companies have to foot the bill for these government schemes. Rather than that, we take the onus off the taxpayer, stop them paying for all the government schemes, which are likely going to be rubbish and aren't going to hit the 2050 targets anyway, and instead allow entrepreneurs to innovate and be rewarded with profit incentives for all of the more sensible inventions that they're going to do that will get us to a more economically and environmentally sustainable place. And then we reap the benefits of lower energy costs, sustainable energy, clean air and clean water, as you said.
But this is the thing, isn't it? Everything seems to be about punishing people and taking away people's freedoms as opposed to encouraging the market. I mean, such as governments can do that. Largely, it means getting the heck out and not taxing everything, but encouraging the market to actually produce the solutions. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever. When we see the massive changes we have seen in how we live our lives in the last, I mean, not just last few years, last few decades, I mean, the whole last century, it is incomparable how people live their lives compared to, my childhood in the 70s, for goodness sake, is so different. Innovation is likely to be the route out of here. And it shows for me, I think, an absolute lack of belief in human ingenuity, invention, ability to adapt, and indeed in market economies, that they can't actually deliver that when told, look, we'll incentivize you to do this, and there will be, tax incentives, but they should be very much at the we will enable you to do this and do it cheaply and get this to the market, rather than let's punish everybody with higher taxes for doing things which they want to do, like getting on a plane, like eating meat, traveling by car. Everything so far has been about we need to stop people doing things as opposed to and basically pricing average earners and lower earners out of things while the rich carry on getting their jets, the Prince Harrys, the pop stars and everyone who pontificate on this stuff, who happily carry on getting their flights everywhere and driving their expensive cars. But we need to be sending a very different message about how we're going to do things differently, as opposed to stopping people enjoying those wonderful freedoms of international travel and owning their own car and being able to heat their homes cheaply. I mean, these are hard-won, enjoyable freedoms.
I'm shocked that so many vegans, honestly, are so averse to using carrots rather than sticks. But it's there's definitely the propensity of human ingenuity over the last few centuries has saved lives. I mean, if you look at the statistic of most of civilization throughout history until the last sort of 50 years subsisted on less than $1 a day, and now the global poverty, the Western poverty standard is pretty much higher than the average standard of living was in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the fact that free markets will get us out of this. There's a trend called the environmental Kuznets curve, which shows that as a country's GDP and median household income goes up, environmental consciousness and the willingness to adopt environmentally conscious policies also goes up correlative to that.
Yeah.
So nations which are richer care about the environment more. And as we innovate in these things, we can actually export the technologies around the world and skip over the necessity for developing nations to burn a crap ton of fossil fuels and actually adopt some solid and reliable renewable energy.
Yeah, indeed. Poorer countries, if you haven't got a coal-fired or a nuclear-powered energy, then you're going to be burning wood. But more. The kids who are dying from environmental pollution aren't dying because there's a nuclear power station down the road or a coal power station. They're dying because their parents are burning wood fires in the mud hut that they're living in, for goodness sake. I mean, that's the reality we need to tackle, isn't it? Western nations plant forests rather than burn them for fuel. And these are some simple messages. But so much of this comes down to the fact that it is the quality of life and the length of life, the doubling of average lifespans of human beings in basically little over 100 years, that has been delivered by the Industrial Revolution and by human ingenuity. And yet so much of the issues on climate change is about trying to sort of roll back the Industrial Revolution, seeing the Industrial Revolution as a terribly bad thing, as opposed to the thing that means that 4 of your children don't die in infancy, you don't die at the age of 35 on average, and you don't live a miserable existence, rather than enjoyable life with leisure time, eating good food and travel, which is being expanded around the world. And every country that's delivered that for their people, it's through market economics, not through socialism.
Definitely. I'd like to actually think of fossil fuels as a sort of societal painkiller, as it were. It constituted a necessary stage in human development. It got us off wood burning. It allowed us to have the Industrial Revolution. So we raised the level of life expectancy and lowered infant mortality. And it's only through the contrast between city dwelling and then rejuvenating the wilderness, which we previously had to cut down for burning firewood, that we developed an appreciation of nature anyway. And now, as we've gotten so technologically advanced that we can wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, rather than go the cold turkey route of doing climate lockdowns, for example, that I have Extinction Rebellion's co-founders, when I debated them at Durham Union, on record saying they wanted to repurpose to decelerate capitalist growth, rather than doing that cold turkey method, which will undoubtedly send us into societal shock and massively impact the worst well-off economically in society. We should do a drip feed method, which allows the market to organically innovate away from that. And it will, as much as government bureaucracy presently, things like the petrol car ban, they're going to price people out of car ownership. That's not the way to get there, especially when we've just abandoned the lithium deposits in Afghanistan, and all the other countries around the world are doing it. There's statistics in there about the battery capacity manufacturing, which will raise a fair few eyebrows, I can tell you. Rather than doing that sort of bureaucratic way of doing things, to actually meet the 2050 targets, we need to incentivize ingenuity and innovation more with profit incentives.
Hear to that. Connor Tomlinson from the British Conservation Alliance, thank you very much indeed. 9:44 is the time. Well, very much linked to that is the news that thousands of COP26 delegates will not have to get expensive day 2 PCR tests or fill in those passenger indicator forms that every other person coming into this country, whether a foreign citizen or a British citizen, is required to do, even though there'll be thousands of them coming from many different countries abroad, meeting in one place in enclosed surroundings of all